Now we tackle the disaster risk reduction and management. Disaster risk reduction and management is defined as the systematic process of using administrative directives, organizations, and operational skills and capacities to implement strategies, policies, and improved coping capacities in order to lessen the adverse impacts of hazards and the possibility of disaster. In disaster risk management, there are two major components: the disaster risk reduction and disaster management. Under the component of disaster risk reduction are the following: prevention. It is the outright avoidance of adverse impacts of hazards and related disasters. Prevention expresses the concept and intention to completely avoid potential adverse impacts through action taken in advance. Can be in a form of proper land use or using suitable engineering design. However, oftentimes, complete avoidance of losses is not feasible and the task transforms to that of mitigation. Second, mitigation. The lessening or limitation of the adverse impacts of hazards and related disasters. While the adverse impacts of hazards often cannot be prevented fully, their scale or severity can be substantially lessened by various strategies and actions. Mitigation measures involve a wide range of elements from engineering techniques to environmental policies and even public awareness. Adaptation is the third one. The adjustment in natural or human systems in response to actual or expected climatic stimuli or their effects, which moderates harm or exploits beneficial opportunities. This definition addresses the concerns of climate change and is sourced from the Secretariat of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. The second major component under disaster risk reduction and management is disaster management. Under it, we have another three elements. First, preparedness. It is the knowledge and capacities developed by governments, professional response and recovery organizations, communities, and individuals to effectively anticipate, respond to, and recover from the impacts of likely, imminent, or current hazard events or conditions. Preparedness action is carried out within the context of disaster risk management and aims to build the capacities needed to efficiently manage all types of emergencies and achieve orderly transitions from response through to sustained recovery. Second, we have response. It is the provision of emergency services and public assistance during or immediately after a disaster in order to save lives, reduce health impacts, ensure public safety, and meet the basic subsistence needs of the people affected. Disaster response is predominantly focused on immediate and short term needs and is sometimes called disaster relief. Lastly, we have recovery. It is the restoration and improvement where appropriate of facilities, livelihoods, and living conditions of disaster affected communities, including efforts to reduce disaster risk factors. The recovery task of rehabilitation and reconstruction begins soon after the emergency phase has ended and should be based on pre existing strategies and policies that facilitate clear institutional responsibilities for recovery action and enable public participation. So, this is now the whole picture. Prevention, mitigation, adaptation, and preparedness are classified as pre event activities, while response, relief, and recovery are post event activities. The event that we are referring to is the extreme natural event like typhoon, earthquake, flood, in short, natural hazard. To understand how the system works, here is the DRRM cycle. Disaster prevention and mitigation measures are in place, and capacity building, these are trainings on disaster preparedness for effective response, like first aid and basic life support, water rescue, high angle rescue, and many more, must be done prior to the extreme natural event to reduce the impact brought about by the hazard. Financial and physical help will then be provided to those areas hit by the hazard. Rehabilitation and reconstruction begin soon after the emergency phase has ended and goes back to disaster prevention and mitigation. This is a vicious cycle. In addition to national disaster management systems, there are other effective social mechanisms that can help to reduce the disaster risk. Scientists and practitioners who deal with the issue agree that, particularly in the first days after a disaster, such as an earthquake, a flood, or a cyclone, it is above all the informal aid provided in the local context and solidarity among people that are critical. In fact, most first aid is provided by family and neighborhood networks. That will be the next topic. The community based disaster risk management is a process in which at risk communities are actively engaged in the identification, analysis, treatment, monitoring, and evaluation of disaster risks in order to reduce their vulnerabilities and enhance their capacities. Community based disaster risk management is empowering the civil society to support the government in the fight against disasters. Now, let's take a look at our end. Considering the fact that the Philippines is among the countries who are highly exposed to hazards, the CMU NSTP, particularly the CWTS, is especially designed to train students as volunteers not only on environmental concerns, but also as layman responders. This is so because our government needs warm bodies in the local level, not only to respond to an extreme event, but also to spread the knowledge and skills of DRR. In the face of a disaster, there is no national government that would immediately come to help. With the network of these layman responders, the impact of any hazard may be reduced to a lower scale. Look, this is what NSTP, CWTS, and ROTC had been doing for years as far as DRR is concerned. CMU NSTP is a driver of volunteerism to produce a pool of capable, committed, and empowered volunteers to be part of the National Service Reserve Corps, or NSRC, and in the Citizen Armed Forces. Be a reservist, be a volunteer.